We have an estimate of 180,000 Filipinos here in Singapore. And the profile has changed from a few years back, about 5 or 10 years ago, because there are now more professionals and skilled workers than the household service workers, or HSWs as we call them. So the ratio is now 60% of skilled and professionals and 40% household service workers. Of course, we also have permanent residents, and we have an estimate of about 44,000 of them here. So after that, these permanent residents can become Singaporean citizens later on if they want to. Okay, here at the labor section, or what we call the Philippine Overseas Labor Office, which is under the Department of Labor and Employment in Manila, we have our frontline services here, as you can see from the back. Those who are processing their employment contracts, either new or they are renewing their old contracts because it is good for 2 years. And the others are going home for vacation, and they are getting their overseas employment certificates. Actually, this is a POEA document that will serve, as we call it, their exit clearance from the Philippines to be able to return here in Singapore. But it has been pilot tested here in Singapore because we now have a new BM online OEC system. Meaning later on, once they have already registered with us, they can get their OECs or the employment certificate online. They would not have to come over here. They will just get it if they have their computer and printer. They will just print it there and pay in the banks or any of the payment centers designated by POEA. Well, like I said, in the law, the Migrant Workers Act, it mandates the Department of Labor and Employment that if there is a big concentration of OFWs, or overseas Filipino workers, we have to set up a Philippine Overseas Labor Office. So like in Singapore, where we have, like I mentioned earlier, 180,000, we need to assist them by setting up a polo. So there are about 40 plus polos all over the world, here in Asia, the Middle East, and Europe and Americas. We have have a good relationship with the host government. Whenever there is a need to refer any issue or concern with them, they do meet us, and we try to settle it. Well, in the first place, on our level, we try to settle it if we can. But if there is a need for the host governments, specifically the Ministry of Manpower, which is the equivalent of the Department of Labor and Employment, then we have to consult them or refer the matter to them, because we will need their authority to impose or implement the necessary sanctions against any erring recruitment agency, if any. And to go back to your earlier question on the services that we offer, we also have welfare services. First, we have a Migrant Workers and Overseas Filipinos Resource Center, as we call it. So if we have Filipino OFWs who are in distress, then they can be well, accommodated at the center. So while we are trying to settle their problems, we accommodate them there, and we provide for their needs. If they have also labor-related problems, then we try to settle it with their employers or their recruitment agencies. And aside from that, of course, we are preparing them also for the eventual return to the Philippines, because we don't expect them to be staying here forever. So we have what we call the reintegration programs, where we teach them skills that they may be able to use when they go back home. So we have these skills training programs, which is part of our reintegration. I do believe it will help a lot. The President is in the right track, because the overseas employment program of the Philippine government is supposed to be a stopgap measure. While there are no work or jobs available at home, our workers are finding it abroad. But once our economy has prospered, has grown, and we will be able with that to create enough jobs, then we can already let them come back home. And secondly, this is also for the skills transfer back to the Philippines. While they are abroad, they are able to obtain new skills which they can use and help us in the Philippines. We really need to attract investments back home. Like I said, because this is also in preparation for our workers. Because once investments pour in the Philippines, we will need our workers back home. Then, like I said, there will be technology transfer. So while we are preparing our country, we are also preparing our workers here to be able to work back home. Of course, if they so decide that they will just set up their own businesses, that's also fine, because it's also part of our integration program. It doesn't have to be employment back home. They can also generate jobs by creating their own businesses because they already have that capacity or capability.